Hey, what's up guys, it's Oakley, and we're gonna get this battle started. Well, started, and I have to put it on pause / slow motion, because this is gonna get started really quick. I am Clan Broken Moon. I have a Black Orc in the back with two nasty Skulkers. Gonna have an anti-Wood Elf build. I have Durthu Arrows and two additional Goblin Archers in support, so that'll be to counter the Elves. I have a Catapult to hit people at a distance, and a Ragnarok Spider to punch through shield walls, and then two Chariots. They, as you guys know in the patch, got a buff, so I brought two of these guys. I always like bringing Orc Boar Chariots because I used to have painted figures of them. And then up through the front, I have two Goblin Wolf Riders, very quick and agile, expecting them to pick off archers, and then two Goblin Big Bosses, both of them being mounted on spiders. So, yep, I have a lot of striking power at speed. Then I have two Orc Boys up through the front to kind of soak up damage, Scar Snake just behind them. And, yeah, that's going to be my blob to attack the enemy. On my right flank, I have an ally who is going as, well, obviously the Wood Elves, and he has three Eternal Guards with shields. You see almost everyone taking Wood Elves on multiplayer because they're new and they're fun. Then he has a Glade Guard row, War Dancers row, Wild Riders in the back, a Forest Dragon, or a Glade Lord atop a Forest Dragon, and then he has a Waystalker that can snipe, and then a Spellslinger with the Lore of Life. Pretty standard kind of slice through the the Wood Elves roster. We have a force here, led by Boris Todbringer, I should say. A lot of infantry and units, kind of standard Empire forces with Knights of the Blazing Sun on this flank, and then a mortar blob in the back. So kind of interesting. Never seen Boris Todbringer before in multiplayer. He's supposed to be okay. And to unlock him, you actually have to have beaten, I believe, the Beastman campaign. I do really like the colors and skins on these guys. So CA hasn't really fleshed them out, but I assume it's going to be something that's going to come out in the future as free LC/DLC. The enemy Wood Elves are also starting to move forward with three of these Waystalkers, and they have an ability to snipe at the enemy with high damage, so they were starting to ping our Lord. Our Lord moved out of position, and now they're going to be focusing on our front lines, just tearing through the armor that we have here. You'll see as the shots start to come in, boom, the arrow killed three guys and knocked multiple heads off. That shit is crazy. So that's an interesting choice, but a very expensive skirmishing wing. The rest of this elven body is actually pretty small. You see two Glade Guard units, and the rest, some Eternal Guards vetted up. More in the back, Wildwood Rangers, and a Glade Guard with Starfire Shafts, and then Durthu in the rear. And then they also have some kind of kiting Glade Riders, so Harbinge tips, Harbinge, can't remember how it's pronounced. And then you have the Empire Force with two mortars, two greatswords, and then a whole line of swordsmen up through the front. And I am definitely targeting those greatswords, two Knights of the Blazing Sun, Reichsguard units, and then Karl Franz. And then this is actually one of the largest armies that comes on the battlefield. It's a Wood Elf one, so a lot of light troops, cheap troops, some Treekin, no real big monsters. I think Treekin are good enough. And then the rest is just kind of your cut-of-the-mill troops. I did want to move up here and get some shots off, or get some close-up shots of the mortars getting shots off, because it looks so glorious. I also had painted models of these, and it looked just so freaking cool. So all this while, the battle has only just started, and we're going to be taking significant fire. So there they go, the shots are underway, and in the distance you can see them starting to pummel Boris Todbringer. But I have my counter volleys, and I always like the rock-throwing projectiles as opposed to explosions. They just seem to tear through infantry that much better. And against great swords, it's going to be doing work. Knights of the Blazing Sun, awesome. They do bonuses versus magical units, but we don't really have too many of those, so not quite sure about the pick. Waystalkers are pulling back, and I'm starting to kind of pivot forward with my units. Boris Todbringer and his army here is plowing ahead. You could tell our ally isn't really that skilled at Total War. He's in big clumps, and then his movement orders are literally like an attack forward path. No rhyme or reason, just everything charging forward. So we'll see how this goes. But myself and my ally were a little bit worried because we're like, oh, if we don't support him or commit to this rush, that means we're going to die because they're going to 3v1 him, so we have to help. So he kind of dictated the pace of the battle right from the start, which, yeah, it's a rookie move, but at the same time, might as well just charge the Wood Elves. So now you can see this huge blob pushing forward. Enemy Wood Elves starting to fire at us, and our allied Wood Elves also firing into the enemy front ranks. So this is going to be a really cool charge up through the center. Knights of the Blazing Sun hitting those units. Oh, wow. Lots of abilities getting off here. Durthu there using some abilities. Boris Todbringer did charge his way through. He's going to crush through this spear line. But then he's going to get caught out before he can even get on the archers, and this is just a hot freaking mess. I'm going to put this on slow motion because so much is going on. So yeah, Boris Todberger's force slamming into the Wood Elves, already having swordsmen starting to get crushed, and really not doing anything to take out the enemy archers. One of his Knights of the Blazing Sun is going after a couple skirmishers, but he's getting taken out. Empire's shifting over to reinforce. Then my ally here is coming back in to try and tie down the Empire and commit to this fight. But the Wood Elf here is pivoting over with some Treekin. We have shields, or Eternal Guard with shields to fight them back. So we'll see how this goes. But it's kind of a do or die moment against these double forces here. We'll see if we can break through. On this flank, I did commit some units, so I did bring some forces. My ally also bring 3 men. So we're going to try and run around the flank and ideally get after these archers, because this is a pretty substantial amount of their money, and if we can get at the rear, then hopefully that'll, you know, mitigate the losses we're taking at a frontal assault. But Empire is shifting over its knights, so we'll see how that goes. Meanwhile, on my side, I'm kind of kiting around. I don't necessarily want to commit on this fight because we don't really need to. I just want to hold this force at bay and then kind of just protect that flank while we try and do damage on the right. But the Wood Elves are also shifting a lot of forces over, so this may be an opportunity for me to strike. Lots of chaos ongoing through here. We're not able to find a way through, so I guess we're just going to plow through the center. And I believe it's around this point that our ally, the one who initiated the charge, drops out. And so we're left with no way to coordinate. And so, yep, it's just the AI at this point. So my ally here is doing a good job of holding back the Wood Elves here, putting a lot of suppressive fire with his own guys, taking out enemy monsters and using the Lore of Life to buff our forces. So this is going to keep the enemy Wood Elves from shifting too much in support of the center line. Meanwhile, I'm charging in here with my Goblin Big Boss, and I have Orc Boys to tie down the center, and then I'm pulling through with Skarsnik to reinforce that engagement. I have 2 of my Skulkers pushing through to the Elven line, and those guys are actually really good. Notice how they're not taking any direct damage. That's going to be important, and we get back to it. But look at all that Elven fire. So we're going to actually be able to outdo our opponents on this flank, which is great because, yep, our right flank is completely starting to evaporate. Durthu in the mix, not looking too good. But I'm using my Goblin Big Boss to absorb a lot of the enemy firepower, which is going to allow my Skulkers to close in and Chariots to close in. I'm also going to try and shoot the gap with my other mobile units, and then I'm going to start to move in with the rest of my forces so I can chow down on this battle line here. He doesn't have that many archers, actually only 3 of them. 2 of them are currently moving back, so I'm doing a good job putting pressure. And Skarsnik is pulling away from that engagement. And take a look at this little maneuver here. I charge in just to scare the archers back, and then I pull out. The reason for this is, yes, I could charge in immediately, but there's no point. My goal is not to take on that front line immediately. It's to get around the flanks. So I'm allowing my Chariots a little bit more time to get at the archers, and that's what I'm doing with my Goblin Big Boss. And so there's no point to get into that engagement. So I pull back a little bit. It opens up some more gaps in the enemy formation. And then I'm going to charge back in against these guys, 2v1ing them without clear support. And Skulkers have armor-piercing damage, which is great. So I'm going to be able to... They're actually a really good counter to the Eternal Guard, so I'm going to be able to kill them pretty easily. And now that little time that I bought with my maneuver is going to give me an opportunity to come in with my Chariots. I could do Hammer and Anvils, but I know that the real threat and my real objective is the archers. The main line I will deal with. It's really important to knock these archers off the field, because if I don't, they'll slaughter my guys. I'm going to turn around with my Goblin Big Boss, and he's going to be the one hammer and anviling, but these Chariots are the ones who definitely have to at least keep these archers running around. I'm getting slowed by all these arrows, and so this is going to start to do a fair amount of damage to me. I really have to pull out. Treekin getting in the mix, rolling in, so they're starting to hammer me. So I'm going to continue to right-click attack orders, getting kind of stuck, taking a lot of damage, but Goblin Wolf Riders are here to support, and finally I break through, and now it's going to be easier to start to run amok in these loose archer units. So yep, there you go, I have it tied down. In the rear, I'm bringing forward another chariot unit, and now I'm going to 1-2 punch these archers. So yeah, the back lines of the elves are pretty done for. I have 1 orc boy against 2 eternal guards. That's not going well, but on this side with the skulkers, with the armor piercing damage that I was telling you about, they're actually going to do really, really, really good against these forces. And then Skarsnik is here. I committed my spider. Ally committed the forest dragon. So we're going to crush that flank. Orc immortals also helped out. So now we're going to be able to surround this elven army that is kind of being 2v1'd at this point. So we're doing tit for tat what the opponents are doing for us on the other flank. Let's see this big boss charging through here. So yeah, that's going to clean up the Elven main line. However, on the right side, we've completely kind of evaporated. The enemy cavalry from the Empire is going to charge into our forces. We have a lot of archers here that are susceptible to charges. Yeah, we're going to focus fire, but we really need to pull in guys, so my Black Orcs are going to do just that. On the right side, we have the General of the Empire tied down with a lot of Boris's forces, but the rest of his guys are all in the ground, dead and dying, not much left. And yeah, there's this big cluster of remaining forces. We did do some disruption to the enemy rear lines with the cavalry around the right flank, but it's been kind of finished off at this point. My ally still has some elves in the mix, but I don't expect them to last much longer. I mean, yeah, Durthu in the back, plus supporting fire, plus our guys repositioning elsewhere. Our elves are not going to last very long in this moment. I do have a Goblin Big Boss in the mix trying to help out. I'm going to try and pull him out. And we did see the cavalry off. A lot of archers supporting fire, plus the dragon here, was enough to see them off without too many terrible losses. So this is pretty cool. Enemy trying to cast spells on us, so we're going to have to pull out in that engagement. Choose our battles. Ooh, and you saw that projectile just barely miss our lord. And we still have artillery, so I figured, you know, the enemy's in a big cluster. Let's pull out of that engagement and let my artillery just tear through them. Oh my god, that's a lot of abilities being popped. That's crazy. On this flank, the rear lines have been, yeah, completely torn through, tattered into little bits and pieces, and everything is routing. Those chariots are doing their work, running amok. So it was a good choice for me to decide to go after those archers instead of hammer and anviling. It allowed us to clean up the rear lines. And yeah, see that off. And the main line here did well enough with just a couple rear charges from my Goblin Big Boss. Skarsnik in for support, so we did away with that army. So I'm going to reposition Nasty Skulkers over here. Still at pretty good health after taking out those... not Glade Guard, Eternal Guard. Pretty happy about that. Black Orcs still at full strength. Spiders still at full strength. So we still have some pretty heavy hitting forces. Meanwhile, the enemy that's positioned here is now going to start taking a lot of fire from our own archers, who have not necessarily been as harassed as you would think. So yeah, the enemy may have won on foot, but they committed a lot more of their resources to having foot troops, and now they're going to be dealing from that. The only real advantage they have, I guess, is kind of additional artillery units, but mortars really don't do as much damage against infantry as my trebuchet. Arachnarch Spider here, just picking at the flanks. I'm a little scared of these elven archers and heroes starting to reform, and the cavalry starting to move up, so I'm going to pull out my unit. We also have the General of the Empire trying to come after our Glade Lord, plus cavalry coming in after the archers. We do kind of nab them with our Aserai Spears just at the last moment. So that was really cool, and we've managed to save our Lord just barely, so all of this kind of safeguarding ourselves by the archer forces. However, the distraction against our archer troops means the enemy archers can now start firing. So this is a really cool back and forth battle. The enemy here had attack orders on the Arachnarch Spider, so I pulled out and charged in with other units. That's a nice little trick you can do, so you get the charge on them, and if they don't change their charge, so they're still targeting the Arachnarch, it means that I get a clean charge against them and they're caught flat-footed, which is awesome. My Black Orcs here are thinking of moving forward to commit and see off the enemy cavalry, but I'm a little scared of pushing too far forward and getting in range of the archers, so I'm going to hold them there as kind of a bastion behind which we can rally. A couple archers here, just goblin archers, tearing apart the remaining troops. My two chariots here are trying to get in after the elven forces, but they've somewhat reformed, and with Treekin and a Waystalker coming back, it's going to be a little bit hard for me to destroy that. But I'm also not willing to commit too much to that, so I think it's enough to tie them down. Nasty Skulkers and Orc Boys destroy that force, and now you can see the remaining enemy army not actually as strong and formidable as it was looking just a couple seconds ago. And that has a lot to do with my trebuchet fire and also the archer fire we've been dealing. But these archers are kind of in a dangerous position. We can pop overhead, cavalry moving in, and look at all the enemy fire starting to come in. But I don't think they're choosing the right units to hit. They should really be going after my Black Orcs and our archers. And the Arachnarch Spider. They got a lot of high value targets they could better be shooting at. My Arachnarch Spider thinks about committing against the enemy blob. But at this point I pull back. We just don't have our forces ready yet to assault. I'm going to wait for the critical moment to engage. We're still seeing off some cavalry, so I'm going to wait for our lines to reform before I commit those archers. Or sorry, that spider. And now I decide, okay, we've reformed a little bit. Let's charge in. Yeah, this Jade Wizard taking lots of damage, and then we're also putting on a lot of fire to the enemy main lines there. So I actually haven't seen him cast too many deadly spells. I did see a couple explosions early on, but late game it looks like they're starting to run out of a little bit of mana. And then here the spider tosses around these waste stalkers, which is going to be awesome. It's going to make an opening for me to come through. Chariots in the background continuing to clean up those forces. And yeah, now we're tied in and amongst the archers. We literally splatter them, push them all the way back to the artillery. That's how far we push into the enemy remaining lines. And then here we're going to continue to pull straight through, going after a bit of the cavalry and just trying to tear through the enemy line. And you can see all the archers, the entire enemy force is pulling back. Durthu is still left, but Skarsnik is going to get in on that action. We do have some supporting fire coming in. All kinds of abilities being popped. The Orc Boy's also going to try and commit here. He tries to stab my squig right through the fat face that it has, but nope. We dodge it, and now we're going to kind of start to see him off. And he's going to try and get on out of here. Regroup with the rest of his army, but as a living tree, he's not really that fast. He's gonna take a couple whips at our forces, tie him down, but now poor Boris Todbringer's forces come in. Some of his knights do come back from the enemy forces to try and rally, but all kinds of abilities getting off here. His health is starting to drain desperately, and Skarsnik there gets a explosive shot off against him. That has him down to his last little sliver of health. You can see up here, yeah, he has almost nothing, and then I send one of my war bosses after it, trying to gain the glory of killing this giant tree creature. And it's actually going to be a couple archer volleys here that are going to come in for support. Boom! That put the nail in the coffin, and then he just staggers over and plops down into the ground. A couple of the arrows still sticking out of his back. So that was a pretty significant win for us. The enemy's going to fire into my goblin war boss in retribution, but I'm going to pull out of there. And so that basically mopped up the heart of the enemy main line here, and now it's going to be a falling back and retreat position for them. Skarsnik is in the mix amongst the enemy forces here, seeing them off. A couple fire effects and explosions that may have been the Jade Wizard actually getting some more shots in on us. Some enemy wood elves going to try and tie us down, but for the most part they are sent scattering. My Ragnarok Spider has started to take a little bit of a beating, but not enough to be significant. And now we have the enemy on the run, so this is looking really solid. Although at the same time, we do have a general of the Empire still running in the back, and we're starting to get a bit of the enemy coming back from the distance. So they did kill my chariots, it looks like. The Glade Lord and a couple Glade Guards saw off my forces. So kind of slowly, while we're trying to beat back the main enemy force, they're starting to recover their numbers around the battlefield. Here I have 2 heroes, or technically 3, because I guess Skarsnik has a pair of heroes in it. But yeah, they're going to be trying to see off the remainder of the elves. Shouldn't be too hard to see them off. And yeah, I'm going to pop some abilities. And that's going to start to see those Eternal Guard off. Oh, actually, it looks like they had an enemy hero in there as well. And now the kiting begins. Oh my god, look at that spearman trying to see off the enemy. He's having a hell of a time trying to see him off. I do really like the new uniforms for those guys. They look awesome. But yeah, not much that's left, although you do see still those 3 waste stalkers still pretty much at full health. 1 dropped to half, but 3 of them still in pretty good numbers, and they're just barely faster than the spider. And they're going to be running back, taking pot shots, and they're actually doing significant damage to my black orcs. Give them enough time, and they should be able to see me off. So they're going to try and deal with my black orcs with a nice charge in through here. It's a kind of a noble gesture, but these are light cavalry, and the black orcs will pick themselves up and dust themselves off. I think what their intention was to take out my heavy infantry and then try and split up with the waste stalkers and shoot my Ragnarok Spider from all directions. Pretty good move, but we have enough remaining archers to the point where I don't think it'll matter too much here in the end. And my Ragnarok Spider finally does actually get after them, and it does pick up some speed when you get a charge off. So just like you can see here, boom, sends him running like, or not even running, just sends him flying a good, half football field length away. So I got him isolated. We got the rest of our army pulling up. I am pulling back with Skarsnik. He's a little bit hurt, and like I was saying, the rest of the enemy force is kind of starting to rally itself. Dryads and other forces that are coming back from routing. The Glade Lord there, really cool, running with the arrow in one hand, bow in the other. And the General of the Empire is a little bit scary, actually, because with the Griffin, it can do a fair amount of damage, and they are, I believe, actually more powerful than our own Glade Lord atop a dragon, so they could actually take out our Lord in aerial combat if we're not too careful. So they still do pack a punch, and it looks like the enemy is also going to be trying to rally around kind of the remainder of our force here, what's left of it. While meanwhile we try and chase off this force, and we have finally gotten them. They've kited us all the way back, but we've gotten them pinned up here against the edge of the map, so this should be, you know, nowhere left to run. Glade Lord here, still really good health, but just not much hope left for his side of the battle. So we're going to see him off. Don't think we're going to be able to get a kill on him just quite, but we're going to ensure that he gets chased off the battlefield for sure. Goblin War Boss also in here getting some kills. And yeah, the spider is going to be turning about. Two of the Waystalkers on this front are going to get quadruple team by a bunch of our remaining elite forces. And looks like the last, oh my god, they keep getting punted. So the last one gets seen off, and this dragon's going to just pounce on him. And if he doesn't get it, then a spider's got him. And if a spider doesn't get it, then Skarsnik. Oh, no, actually looks like they're all turning about. Just going to fire into his back, and he's going to walk off in his camo, repeatedly saying, "You don't see me, you don't see me, you don't see me." And he's going to walk off the battlefield like that. So apparently his camo worked. But yeah, now we're doing a bit of a rally. So our infantry is pretty tattered. Our heroes are relatively low health, but we do have a couple of nice beefy units, presumably my heroes. And the enemy is going to start to rally themselves, as we saw. Their strongest unit is obviously going to be the Empire General on a Griffin. And they do have some cavalry, which can be pretty punishing. Some great swords, and other units, and a Glade Lord on the left. So not too bad in terms of their army strength. It's really going to come down to this last little engagement. If they can take out our hero with the General of the Empire, kind of kite in the front, then they could potentially do a big damaging blow to our morale. But all we have to do is kind of stay together in a compact blob, keep our archers up front to harass the enemy, and kind of see them off, and then slowly and methodically push up to close the distance. So we'll see kind of how that goes in a couple minutes. For the time being, we're trying to rally our forces. One of the things we're going to do is decide that, hey, you know, we're all bloodied and bruised and tired, so we're going to try and regroup, and we're going to pull a little bit of a huddle here, because one of the tricks we have up our sleeves is a spell singer with the lore of life. So she is actually over there on the left floating, and she does still have some winds of magic left. And so what my ally is going to tell me is, hey, let's group up. He starts to paint on the map, and we're going to try and do just that. Start to move forward a little bit, and this spider is going to be a bit of the rallying cry. So we have kind of a motley crew of different heroes here. Pretty cool to see. A spider and the dragon. Almost sounds like a fairy tale here moving forward. And yeah, this is going to be our motley crew of the army. And now the spider turns about, and we're going to head towards this central point. We figure if we're going to pop an ability for the lore of life, everyone's got to get in on the fun. So we're going to crowd in as closely as possible. We were kind of fingers crossed that the enemy wouldn't have any, I don't know, remaining artillery or magical bombardments that they could use, because that would spell doom to us in terms of what we're going to be doing here in a second. But yeah, this spell singer is going to be focusing her might, getting ready for the task at hand, and she has seen a lot of things. But now all of our forces are going to try and cluster up in one little bundle. And this is going to be pretty cool. So I'm going to put it on slow motion real quick so you can see the enemy force kind of from their position as they look over and see our huddle, and they, you know, this General of the Empire is trying to rally his men. And meanwhile, their whole army kind of just sees us turning around and doing a big huddle. So that leaves them kind of questioning what the hell is our plan there. So we're doing a bit of a team meeting here, deciding what to do. And we're actually at this point going to wait for the entirety of our remaining forces to come in. So this is a group of soldiers you'd never expect. Elves, orcs, spiders, dragons, all coming together with the Lore of Life spellslinger in the center. And now she's going to pop her ability that we have everyone in range. And take a look at the balance meter here. It reflects unit strength, and now all of a sudden the balance meter is going to start to go more and more in our favor as our units start to grow in strength. Look at that balance bar go completely in our favor, and boom, just like that, the enemy actually routed because the balance bar turned so heavily against them just with the Lore of Life. So it turns out that as an end move is pretty OP. I don't think I've ever seen that. That was really cool. I was kind of excited to see the final face-off between the forces, but I guess the Huddle and the Lore of Life in the end game was just too OP for them. So the General of the Empire here sees himself off. They didn't have the huddle that we had. They were jealous of the team mechanics that we had, and they just quit the field. So kind of a cool little ending to this battle. It was really, really well fought. As you saw, it came down to almost nothing But I think just having the spider and some tanky units that can have a big kind of health pool that we could have buffed at the end was really, really favorable to us. Taking a look at some of the kills here for my guys, I deployed a fair amount of men, not necessarily the most in the battle, kind of middle of the line, but I think I got a lion's share of the kills on our team. A lot of them from my Goblin War Boss, and then here Forgotten Peasant was the one who tabbed out or dropped out, so he didn't do too well. But I picked up the slack with some of my meaty units, chariots, and other units chasing down archers. Nasty Skulker is doing really well against the Wood Elves. That was cool to see. Definitely going to bring them in future battles. And then the War Bosses here also doing nice work. Star Snake himself doing a lot of work as well. So yeah, I think I brought a nice counter build to the Elves. And then the Empire Force here doing really well. The General of the Empire getting a lot of kills in the late game. Great Swords doing as good as always. And then some of the Elite Cav doing lots of work. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed. Stay tuned for more. And yeah, see you in the next one. Peace out.